Before we begin tonight's majlis, can I request the Surah Al-Fatiha for Marhum Muhammad Ilyas Ghulam Rasul Mu'min. Secondly, for Marhuma Zahra Banu, the daughter of Ghulam Nabi Mu'min. And thirdly and finally, Marhum Sayyid Muntazir Abbas Naqwi. Surah Al-Mubarakatul Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع لذنوبنا وتبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم قال أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم آمنا به صدق الإمام عليه السلام صلوا على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To continue our discussion from last week, examining certain phrases of Dua Kumail, and our discussion in particular is surrounding certain effects of sins that the Imam alayhi salam begins to describe. And of course, in this particular paragraph, the Imam alayhi salam begins to speak about the identity of certain sins and the effects of these sins. And what's interesting is that, as we've seen in the past few weeks, the Imam alayhi salam doesn't examine or doesn't, for example, specify which sins have which effects. Rather, he keeps the discussion very open, in the sense of somehow leaving a sense of ambiguity. And what this does is this effectively allows us to approach the whole concept and the idea of sin with great precaution. And the Imam alayhi salam doesn't say, for example, there are certain sins which bring about the effects of changing one's ni'mah, changing one's, brings forth, for example, adversities. The Imam keeps the whole discussion open. He keeps it ambiguous. And what this does in turn is that it allows us to approach sin from a very precautious position. That whenever I come across a particular sin in my life, I say to myself that this sin can potentially change the ni'mat that I have in my life. That this sin, for example, potentially has the ability and the power to block my du'as from being answered. Or these sins in particular has the potential or has the power to attract adversities in my life, punishing adversities. But when you refer to the other narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, for example, the narrations of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, the narrations of Imam Sajjad, the narrations of Imam al-Baqir in particular, these Imams of the Ahlul Bayt go on in more detail, explaining and examining, specifying which sins have which effects. And last week our discussion was with regards to the sins which promote or which attract punishing adversities. And we examined the concept of adversities, bala and misfortune in one's life. And we said that according to the Quran and the language of the Holy Quran, adversities is something which is normal. It's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That when a mu'min, when a Muslim, when a human being goes through certain adversities in his life, certain misfortunes, certain bala, this in fact is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that allows the human being to fine-tune himself from within. It allows himself to better himself in his relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there are certain sins that if a person was to commit them, they no longer attract adversities that are based by the blessings of Allah, but they attract adversities which are punishing in nature and stripped from all bounties and all blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of these sins was known as dhulm. The famous hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam, as well as Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, and amongst the other A'imma alayhim salam, they explain that the sin which brings forth or attracts punishing adversities is dhulm. And that there are three types of dhulm. There is the dhulm that is never forgiven. There is the dhulm that is never ignored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then there is the dhulm which is forgiven by Allah without the person even asking for forgiveness. The dhulm which is never forgiven is the dhulm of shirk. When a person associates something or someone alongside Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two, the dhulm which can never be ignored is the dhulm that when one human being addresses or transgresses the rights of another human being. The third dhulm, which is forgiven without the person even asking for forgiveness, is the small sins that we commit in our daily lives. And of course, we have the Quranic verse in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that goodness prevents or pushes away evilness, in the sense that when we engage in good actions, then those good actions is sufficient for our small bad actions, our small sins to be forgiven. In other verses of the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear that if we were to remain or stay away from the committing of greater sins, al-kaba'ir, then as an effect, as a consequence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive our small sins. And so, in tonight's discussion, I want to go on to examine the following statement of the Imam alayhi salam, when he begins to say, Allahumma aghfir li al-dhunub allati tughayyiru an-na'am. When he begs Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, Ya Allah, from all of the sins that I have committed, forgive those sins which changes my blessings, which changes my ni'mat. And what is a ni'mah in reality? A ni'mah is something that is a bounty or a blessing that has been given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Needless to say, if a person was to just sit down and just open his mind and just reflect and ponder, he will realize and he will come to the conclusion that his life is surrounded by millions of ni'mat. Divine blessings surround us in our lives. Every moment of our life, we are surrounded by the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what distinguishes us. Mankind is distinguished one from the other from the bounties that he has. You'll find, for example, there are certain people in the community, they are known to be wealthy. Others in the community are known to be wise. Others in the community are known to be scholars. Others in the community are known to be generous. These are all different bounties that we have in our lives. And it distinguishes us one from the other. And we're not meant to be the same. We need to keep this in mind, that as human beings, we are meant to be different. Each and every one of us, for example, we have different skills. We have different, for example, levels of understanding. We have different IQs. We have different ways of approaching life. We have different methods in how we conduct ourselves and how we carry ourselves in life. We are never meant to be the same. No two human beings are meant to be the same, in the sense that because we all differ in the skills that we have, we try and support one another in trying to maintain a community, in trying to establish a community. Not just to establish a community, but to try and uphold the values of that community and move towards progression. The advancement of the community or an advancement of a society is when human beings rely upon each other, that there is trust within or between ourselves, that I utilize my skills to try and create a better environment within society, and you utilize your skills to try and create a better environment in society, and so on and so forth. This is how a society is built. This is how a society progresses and advances, that we all rely upon one another. We all learn from one another, and therefore we can move together. When a person, however, and this is something that is of course often discussed by the ulama, you say, when you look at a person who wants to start a business, a person, before starting a business, of course, researches what he should enter in terms of his trade. A person should see what product there is demand of in the community or in the society. He would then figure out, for example, make a business plan, try and figure out the profits, try and figure out the losses that he will incur in the first few months. He will have a short term, he will have a medium term, he will have a long vision in place. When a person, therefore, goes into, for example, his shop, opens his shop, lays out all of the products there for the people to come and buy, he may attract the customers, but at times he may not be able to attract the customers. In a particular market, there may be a lot of competition. It's not just you who's selling that product to the people, to the customers. There are many other shops selling similar products. What draws the customers into your shop and to buy from you and hence increase your profits, that's not in your hands. That's in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What comes in your hands, what you can do, and only so far you can go, is to try and present that product to the customers. But whether they buy from you or not is not in your hands. That is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because of how much competition there is within that particular market, you may either be successful in selling your products or you may fail in selling your products. The idea behind this is that rizq, sustenance, bounties, blessings, everything has been ordained and determined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing is in our hands. I may have a very effective business plan in place, but if I fail, it is because Allah has chosen that I fail. I may have spent thousands in marketing myself. I may have spent thousands in advertising. I can only do what I can do, and that can take me only so far. But the rest is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How much wealth I gain and how much profits I gain, all of that is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's a very interesting story. They say there was a king. And this king, he was a very powerful king. And he was, of course, surrounded by many of his servants. There were the entertainers, there were the poets, there were the ulama, there were the wise men. They were from his close confidence, and so on and so forth. You say one day he was sitting and he heard a conversation that took place between an alim and another alim, between two amongst his ulama. Upon which one alim said to the other, who said, there is nothing in this world except that it belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that Allah has determined for His servants, for His creation, Allah has determined for His creation their rizq and their sustenance, their bounties and their blessings, their ni'amat in general. The king, when he heard this, he had a question for him. He said, look, I believe that Allah is in charge of our ni'amat, but one thing I fail to understand is that also I am in charge of providing ni'amat and blessings to the people of my society. The alim, he says, what do you mean by this? The king, he says, look, we believe that Allah is Ar-Razzaq. We believe that He is the one who provides rizq, but I also provide rizq. Look at this fakir, look at this miskin. If I give him 100 dinars, I know this 100 dinars will take him a long way. I have provided him with this rizq. Not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Where does Allah play a picture, or where does Allah play a role in this picture, in this scenario? Upon which the alim, he replies, he says, my king, you have failed to understand a key feature. He says, what is that? What have I failed to understand? The alim, he says that yes, sahih, what you give from your own pocket belongs to you. It is you who is stretching deep down within your pockets, and you are the one giving your wealth. But that wealth has been given to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the sense that Allah has guided you somehow to give from your wealth to that fakir or to that miskin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided you with bounties and ni'amat. He is the source of your ni'amat. Yes, you are the one giving wealth, but where did you get that wealth from? It is Allah who has granted you that wealth in the first place. And many a times we need to be mindful of this, we need to be conscious of this reality. And many a times, because we tend to be heedless of this reality, we often think about the bounties that we have and the blessings that we have without even remembering or reminding ourselves the sources of these bounties and these ni'amat. The alim, he says to the king, he says, refer to the ayat of the Holy Quran, قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكِ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِ الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ. That everything belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. From amongst them the kingdoms of this world, and He gives to whomever He wishes. تَبَارَكَ الَّذِي بِيَدِهِ الْمُلْكِ. Glorified is He who in His hands is the mulk, and He gives it to whomever He wishes. The idea behind this is that every single bounty that we have within our lives, every single blessing that we see in our lives, all of it is ascertained and determined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of it has been given to us by Rabbul Alameen. And that's why when you come to certain nights during the year, for example, the 15th night of Shahadat, or Laylatul Qadr, this is the night in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordains and determines the ni'amat for the following year. Yes, according to the riwayat of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And of course, needless to say that we are surrounded by millions of blessings all the time. Every movement that we make, every thought that comes into our minds, every time we taste food and we enjoy the luxury of being able to taste food, every time we're able to speak, every time we feel an emotion, every time we get to enjoy some of our desires, all of it is because Allah has willed it so. It is because Allah has given us the permission to enjoy some of His blessings and some of His bounties. And so when you come towards this reality, and we say to ourselves that our lives are filled with many blessings and many bounties, the fundamental question is raised. And it's a very important question, a rudimentary question. And the question is, why is it, or what sins block our ni'amat? What sins cancels our divine blessings and our divine bounties? Yes, Allah gives us from His wisdom, and He gives us from His knowledge, and He gives us from His generosity and His compassion. But there are certain sins that if we were to commit them and continue to commit them, we will become what? We will become blocked from receiving the blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a fundamental question. Here the Imam alayhi salam in Dua Kumail is saying, Allahumma aghfir li al-dhunub allati tughayyiru al-ni'am. Forgive me the sins which block my ni'amat, which changes my blessings and my bounties. When you refer to the ahadith of the A'imma alayhim salam, we find that there are many different sins which block our ni'amat. The first of which is known as al-baghi. Baghi is what? Is when a person transgresses the rights of another. In terms of acting out on one's desires. And this is usually in reference to a married woman, an adulteress. When she does what she does with another man, she transgresses the rights of her husband. And so one of the sins which changes the ni'amat of a person, an individual, is known as baghi. The second is known as kufran al-ni'ama. And we've had this discussion many times before, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showers us in our lives with different blessings and bounties, it becomes a necessity that we turn to Allah and we say, Ya Allah, shukr alhamdulillah. We turn to Allah either through words, we thank Him through words, or we thank Him through our actions. For example, sajdat al-shukr or salat al-shukr, with the niyat or with the intention of gaining proximity towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or it could manifest itself from the heart, that I may not need to profess through volumes or through my words or through my actions. Rather, my heart from within will churn towards Allah and be grateful towards Him with regards to all of the blessings that He's given us. or He has given me in my life. Kufran al-ni'mah. Look at the ayah of the Holy Quran. Inna al-insana li rabbihi lakanud. That by default the human being is ungrateful. By default the human being will turn towards Allah in the state of ingratitude. That a person has to put in the effort. That a person has to work for himself in trying to be grateful towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, when you refer to the tafsir of this particular verse, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لِرَبِّهِ لَكَنُودٌ, there are many different manifestations of how a person can be ungrateful towards Allah. For example, one of the examples that is given is that a person, he has or he is surrounded by many blessings. But then when a calamity comes across his way, when a calamity comes into his life, he forgets all of the blessings that Allah has given him. He comes to the people in the community, and he complains about his bala, he complains about his tests and his trials and his tribulations, his misfortunes. But he becomes mindless when it comes to the blessings that Allah has given him. Number two, another manifestation is that a person has been given profound blessings by Allah, but he refuses to share it with it. He refuses to help others when they are in times of hardship. He refuses to help those who are in need of help. A third manifestation of kufran and ni'mah is when a person removes Allah from the equation entirely. And the example of which is the example of Qarun, mentioned in the Holy Quran. Qarun, when Allah speaks about Qarun, the cousin of Nabi Musa alayhi salam. Whenever Allah speaks about Qarun, the only thing that Allah says is that this person was given ample wealth, that he was able to amass great amounts of wealth in his life. To the extent that the narrations explain that 40 men were needed to pick the keys of his treasures, the keys of his safe. And that's how much wealth he had in his possessions. And yet one day he comes forward and he says that it is through my knowledge that I was able to amass great wealth. Not Allah, not anyone else. Me and my own knowledge and my experiences in life, I was able to amass great wealth. Allah opens the earth and swallows him entirely. Kufran and ni'mah is when you believe that you are the source of your bounties, not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is the level of pride, and that is of course a level of arrogance. And then you have, for example, the third sin, which is known as tark al-shur. Tark al-shur is what? Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was one day asked, he said, which sins changes our ni'mat? Upon which the Imam alayhi salam replies, he says, it is known as tark al-shur. Tark al-shur means that Allah has given you all of the bounties that you have and all of the blessings that you hold in your life. But you do nothing with those bounties. You keep it to yourself and you block others from benefiting from it. Allah has given you, for example, wealth, but you do not support those who are in need financially. Allah has given you wealth, but you refuse to pay zakat. You refuse to share your wealth in sadaqah. You refuse to pay khums. Yes, when a person neglects his khums, this is one of the manifestations of kufran and ni'mah. Allah has blessed you with wealth. There are many in the world who have not been blessed with wealth. Allah has blessed you with the bounties of wealth, but you refuse to share it with those who are in need. Allah will take that wealth away from you. Tark al-shur, for example, I have ilm. It becomes my responsibility to give back this knowledge to the people of my community. I work for a very profound or a Fortune 500, for example, company. I'm very successful in the corporate world. I need to give back to the community. I need to raise my children, for example, or the children in the community. Teach them certain skills that they will be able to utilize in the world. Not just Islamic skills, not just give them information about Islam, but give them information how to earn a living, how to, for example, look after many aspects of their lives. They may not necessarily learn this from the schools. It becomes our responsibility to sit with our children and teach them certain aspects of this life, certain skills that they may be able to develop, either through experiencing certain aspects in their lives, or they can learn it from others in the community. If I have ilm, I need to give back to the community. If I have a certain skill, I need to give back to the community. I need to volunteer my time trying to keep up with the activities in the community, to try and give my time, for example, to the madrasa, or to the seniors, or to this group, or to that group in the community. All of this is what known as the ability, is known as the concept or the element of giving back to the community as much as possible. To not just keep the skills that I have been given to myself and myself alone. Another sin which, for example, changes the ni'mat and the bounties of people, the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is when I delay my salah. Delaying one's salah is a topic in itself, a profound discussion. You know, some people, they come forward and they say to pray awwal al-waqt is a very difficult thing to do. I'd rather, for example, delay my salah and pray at a time which is convenient for me. Some others have come and have said, for example, and I've had many discussions in this area, they say that sometimes awwal al-waqt, it's time for salah, but my mind is not there, my heart is not there. And I know for a fact that if I was to recite salah in that moment in time, with that mindset, my salah will not carry much weight, my heart will not be present. So I'd rather delay my salah to a more appropriate time and then engage with my interaction with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By then I know that I'll have, for example, the presence of my heart and my mind, and my salah will carry weight. The ulama, they came forward and they said, when you take, for example, the ahadith of the A'imma alayhim salam, in which they emphasize and reiterate the importance of salah fi awwal al-waqt, you realize that such excuses are futile. Such excuses do not hold any weight whatsoever. Sometimes we feel that if I was to pray awwal al-waqt, then that burden is heavy on me. I have work, for example, I have certain responsibilities I need to carry out. For me to drop all of that to go and pray, that's heavy. That's a heavy responsibility which I may not be able to adhere to. Rather, if I was to delay my salah for a short period, for a short while, then the responsibilities of salah will be much more easier and much more lighter for me. The ulama came forward and said the opposite is much more truer than what this person believes. That if you believe that praying awwal al-waqt is thaqeel on you, is heavy on you, then you should realize that praying awwal al-waqt is much more easier than praying and delaying your salah later on. Praying or delaying your salah later on is much more heavier for you, or it becomes much more heavier for you. And of course, coupling with the riwayat of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam, we realize that praying awwal al-waqt is a fadila in itself, and it attracts the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It attracts the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Delaying one's prayers from awwal al-waqt, it changes the ni'mat of a person completely. And it's interesting because when you refer to the ulama and the words of the ulama, the likes of Sheikh Ayatollah Marhum al-Bahjat, rahmatullah alayh, and how he used to focus in advising his followers to pray awwal al-waqt, and the likeness of, for example, many of the Urafa, many of them would say that the simplest thing we can do in these times as well, since we are still locked in lockdown, we should try and pray and adhere to our salah fi awwal al-waqt. The only time when salah should not be recited in awwal al-waqt, there's only one circumstance when praying on time can be delayed or is not good for the Muslim, is when if there is the option of praying salat al-jama'ah. And of course our fuqaha have come forward and discussed this greatly. And the discussion, which is very simple, they say a person should delay praying on time as long as he knows that he will be able to join for Salat al-Jama'ah. Why? Because the rewards for Salat al-Jama'ah are far more profound than praying on time. And this is the only time when a person should not pray on time. This is the only circumstance when a person should not pray on time. So you find that delaying one's prayers or one's salah has the ability to change one's ni'mat. Then you have, for example, the idea of not having ghayrat. That, for example, a person who is in charge of his family, a person who sees his wife leave the house, who sees his daughters leave the house. He sees the people in the community and the society look at their wives and their daughters in a particular way. He feels no sense of protection for them. He doesn't care. He says to himself, convinces by his false premises that this is how the society is, and this is how people in the society are. When a person has no ghayrat for himself and his family, then this changes the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the idea behind all of this is that when you refer to the ayat of the Holy Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَتَسِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا, and hold on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and do not deter or do not cause differences within the society amongst yourselves. The idea behind this is what comes after this verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. Remember the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you have within your lives. And this is something that we definitely need to be cognizant of. And this is something that we need to be conscious of. That if I was to sit and I was to ponder, and I can see for myself that my life is full of different blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me, I can say to myself, I can convince myself that my blessings are far more than the blessings that I have not been given. You see, as mankind, you see, as human beings, we have this ability to always focus on things that we don't have in dunya. I don't have wealth, so therefore I utilize many of my times, many of my hours during the day trying to amass wealth. I don't have knowledge, so I, for example, focus a lot of my time in gaining knowledge. I don't have, for example, certain blessings, and this clouds my mind and it clouds my judgment. Many a times we need to sit down, we need to relax, we need to take a deep breath. We need to remind ourselves the blessings that Allah has given us rather than focusing on the blessings that He hasn't given us. And of course, if we were to be cognizant, if we were to be conscious of the millions of blessings that revolve around our lives, it makes it easier for us to appreciate what we have compared to what we don't have. We're able to approach life from a positive perspective. We can attract positivity rather than constantly being pessimistic and negative because of the blessings that we have not been given. In a different verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear, وَإِن تَعُدُّوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ لَا تَحْسُوهَا, that if a person was to remunerate all of the blessings that Allah has given him, he will never be able to count them because they will go into the millions. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showers His people, Allah showers His servants with His infinite blessings. And of course, these are some of the sins which cancels the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that if a person wants to secure the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he must secure what? Refraining from these types of sins. But there is a profound verse in the Holy Quran. There is a profound verse in the Holy Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to speak about the destiny of the human being. In which, in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَمْحُ اللَّهُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيُثْبِتُ. It says that there are certain destinies that have been written for the human being. Certain destinies have been written, but they can also be erased. And that they have not been written, for example, they have not been engraved in gold. And the idea behind this is that our destinies constantly change. And that depends on the actions that we perform in dunya. Allah has attained and determined for us certain blessings. But there are certain sins that if we perform them, Allah will change those blessings for us. Meaning what? Meaning our destinies will be erased and rewritten. But there are two actions in particular that if a person was to perform these two actions specifically, not only will it change the destiny of the human being and fill it with khair and barakah, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will shower His servants with more blessings and more barakah. What are these two blessings? What are these two actions? The first of these actions is what is known as sadaqah, and the second which is known as silat al-rahim. These two actions, it promotes what is known as, it promotes and it attracts the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah changes our destiny for the better. Allah changes our destiny and fills it with khair and barakah. And therefore, when we turn towards the life of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, and tonight being the night of the wafat, of the Shahadat of Imam Sadiq salawatullahi wassalamuhu alayhi, we see that the Imam used to constantly focus on these two actions. Many a times these two actions can be combined, and the effects and the thawab of it can be propounded and compounded in our lives. And many a times these two actions can be neglected together, which then brings forth the adversities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our lives, punishing adversities in our lives. Imam Sadiq salawatullahi wasalamuhu alayhi, and there are many stories in his life in which how he used to, for example, engage in Silat al-Rahim. And Silat al-Rahim is a profound concept. And the reason being is because it is not just an individual concept, it is a social concept. That if a person was to adhere to Silat al-Rahim, then this person will not only be able to develop a strong family, but be able to develop a strong community, and in turn a strong society. And Silat al-Rahim dictates that a person shows his love and care and attention to not just himself, but the people around him as well. They say when the Imam alayhi salam was on his deathbed, when the Imam was moving from consciousness and unconsciousness, one of the servants of the Imam came towards him by the name of Salima. And she narrates this. She says when the Imam became conscious, he called one of his companions and gave him 70 dinars. He said to this companion, go towards the house of Hussein ibn Ali, known as Hussein al-Aftas, and give him the 70 dinars. And then go to the second fulan and give him 70 dinars. And then go towards the third house and give this fulan 70 dinars. Salima narrates, she says, I came towards the son or the grandson of Rasulullah, the Imam alayhi salam, and I said to him, Yabna Rasulullah, Hussein al-Aftas is your enemy. He does not pray for you. He does not care for you. He has ill intentions towards you. Man, this person wants to kill you. Why do you support him with 70 dinars? Upon which the Imam replies, Ya Salima, do you wish me to be those who have been neglected? Do you wish for me to be those who attracts the adversities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? She says, Yabna Rasulullah, of course not. Upon which the Imam replies, the Imam says that that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the heavens. And Allah has created a scent within the kingdoms of heaven. And this fragrance can be smelt from a year away. That if a person was to turn away from the kingdoms of heaven, from the gates of heaven, and continue walking for an entire year, whether it is from the time of this world or the time of the hereafter, we don't know. But this person continues to walk for an entire year, this person will be able to smell the fragrance of Jannah. Upon which the Imam says, Ya Salima, there are only two types of people who will not be able to smell the fragrance of Jannah. She says, Yabna Rasulullah, who are these people? She says, the first is the one who humiliates their parents, who breaks off relationship with their parents. And the second one is the one who breaks off relationship with their womb relatives. Qat'iyat al-rahab. They will never be able to smell the fragrance of Jannah. So from one perspective, you find that the Imam alayhi salam used to constantly engage in Silat al-Rahim. And Silat al-Rahim is one of those deeds which promotes the changing of one's destiny in such a way that it attracts the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then of course you have another narration which focuses on how the Imam used to be so charitable in his life. Mu'alla ibn Khanis, he narrates, he says, one day I left with the Imam in the middle of the night. We went and we began to distribute food to the people, to the homelessness of the people of Medina. He says, I remember the night very well. It was raining and it was pouring. The Imam left his home and he was carrying a big sack filled with bread and loaves of bread. As the Imam continued to walk towards the outskirts of the city of Medina, some of this bread or pieces of bread would fall onto the floor. And when it would fall onto the floor, I would quickly go and I would pick and I would give it back to the Imam alayhi salam. Sometimes many pieces of bread would fall and I would gather them quickly and then give it back to the Imam. And this would happen constantly, until I said to the Imam, I said, Yabna Rasulillah, why do I not carry the sack for you? Allow me to carry the sack for you. At least you'll be at ease. Upon which the Imam replied to me. He said, Ya Ibn al-Khanis, Ana awla bihi minka. This is my responsibility. And by God, I will make sure that I carry out my responsibility. He says, we went towards the outskirts of the city of Medina. And we began to distribute the loaves of bread to all of those who were sleeping in the middle of the night. There's another narration, another tradition which is very similar, upon which the Imam alayhi salam in the middle of the night, he goes towards the outskirts of the city of Medina. One companion coincidentally saw the Imam alayhi salam in the darkness of the night. And so he begins to follow the Imam. The Imam goes towards the outskirts and he goes to this area known as the Khan, where all of the homeless were sleeping in the roads and in the streets. The Imam would come in the middle of the night and he would provide them with bread and water. When the Imam finished the distribution of the food, he would then come into the city of Medina. The companion, he says, I came and I approached the Imam and I said to him, Yabna Rasulullah, ayadruna al-haqq. Do they know the truth? Upon which the Imam replies, no, they don't know the truth. What does that mean? It means that those homeless, those people who are homeless, they were not from amongst the Shia. They were not from amongst the followers of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. The Imam alayhi salam, he says, they are the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They deserve to be looked after because Allah looks after them. Give from your sadaqah, not just to the Shia, but give to your neighbors from the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and give from your neighbors those who are not even from the religion of Islam. The power of wealth has the ability to soften the heart. Who knows, they may even come towards the religion of Islam because of your generosity. In a third narration, they say the Imam alayhi salam, one day he approaches Abu Jafar al-Khuthami and he gives him a sack of money. He says to Abu Ja'far, I'm giving you an address. Go towards this address, enter the streets, and go towards this house with this number, knock on the door. You will come across a man from the tribe of the Bani Hashim. When you see him, give him this money. Abu Ja'far, he goes towards the address, he knocks on the door, this man, old man, comes out. Abu Ja'far gives him the sack of money. And this happens quite often. Every month, every year, whatever the time frame is, this person would always be looked after. When Abu Ja'far gave him the money, this man, he says to Abu Ja'far, he says, Ya Abu Ja'far, jazakumullahu khayr al-jaza. Wallah, from the time that I have moved into this city, I have never seen a single dirham, a single coin come from my cousin Jafar al-Sadiq. And this man, Jafar al-Sadiq, he is an affluent man, a rich person, but I have never seen a single gold coin come from him towards me. And the idea behind this was that this person, he felt what? He felt as if his own cousin, Imam alayhi salam, was not looking after him. Abu Ja'far, he is shocked. And he says to this person, or he doesn't say, he says to this person, he says to himself, he says that this person has been supported by the Imam for many years, many months. This person is being supported by Imam Jafar al-Sadiq alayhi salam, and he has no idea whatsoever that it is the Imam, his own cousin, who is supporting him. And so the Imam used to constantly engage in sadaqah, especially in secrecy. And this was the sunnah of the A'immah alayhim as-salam. In one final tradition narrated by Mufaddal ibn Umar, it allows you to appreciate how the Imam alayhi salam would look after the people of his community. They say Mufaddal ibn Umar, one day he comes out and he's walking in the streets of Medina. He sees two Shia fighting in conflict with one another. They had a dispute. In regards to inheritance, they were fighting as to who gets their fair share of the inheritance. Mufaddal ibn Umar, one of the companions of the Imam alayhi salam, he stands and he begins to listen to them quarrel. And he listens to their arguments. When the argument is heated, when the argument escalates, Mufaddal ibn Umar says to the both of them, he says to them, stop. Stop fighting and stop quarreling. Both of you, come to my yard. Let's go. And they follow Mufaddal ibn Umar. Mufaddal ibn Umar takes him to his house, and then he gives each and every one of them, he gives both of them 400 dinars. One person is given a sack of 400 dinars, a second one is given 400 dinars. And then he says to them both, he says, forget about your inheritance. I have given you money that is far greater than what you have inherited. Leave your inheritance behind. Are you radi? Are you pleased? Both of them, they said, we are pleased and we have no grudge against each other. None of us will go after that inheritance, because the money that you've given us is far greater than what we could have inherited. Mufaddal ibn Umar, he says to these two people, now stop fighting and leave. One of them turns to Mufaddal, he says, oh Ibn Umar, why is it that you support us from your own wealth? Mufaddal ibn Umar, he replies, he says, this is not my wealth, this is the wealth of my master, Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. He says, one day he came towards me. He said, oh Mufaddal, I'm giving you 2 sacks of gold or 2 sacks of coins. If you see or you come across people from amongst my followers, my Shi'as, who are disputing with one another, who are quarreling because of money, then support them with this money. Let them not quarrel anymore. What a profound lesson that the Imam alayhi salam is delivering to Mufaddal ibn Umar. This is how much care and attentiveness there was from the Imam towards his Shia, towards his companions, towards his followers. Yes, Mufaddal ibn Umar made it clear to them that this is support coming from the Imam alayhi salam, Jafar as-Sadiq. And of course, this is something that we need to be conscious of, we need to be cognizant of, that to be the followers of the Imam alayhi salam, we need to take on his practice. And being a Thursday night, it is a beautiful night that we interact with our Imams. It is a beautiful night for us to interact with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by engaging in Salat al-Rahim, by engaging in giving charity. That's why they say that when Mansur becomes the Abbasid Caliph, the hatred that he had for Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was beyond measure. That one day he commands the Imam to be dragged in the streets of Medina towards his courthouse. When the agents came towards the house of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, they said to the Imam that you have been summoned by Mansur. The Imam replies, he says to them, he says, wait, let me change my attire, let me wear something much more suitable, and then I'll be with you in a moment. Upon which they say, no, the command has been given that we take you the way you are. The Imam is dragged into the streets of Medina. The Imam is taken towards Al-Mansur. When he enters the courthouse, when he enters the palace of Mansur, Mansur gives the Imam some grapes which were then infused with poison. And the Imam, he consumes these grapes and he consumes these poison. And when the poison enters the body of the Imam alayhi salam, the health of the Imam then begins to deteriorate. The Imam returns to his home and the Imam is therefore bedridden. His body begins to break apart. His body begins to be destroyed from within. The pain was so severe. All through the severity and the extremity of the pain, the Imam would constantly become unconscious. He would move from the state of consciousness to unconsciousness. Hamida, the wife of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, she narrates, there is a narration that she narrates, she says, one night in his final moments, the Imam alayhi salam, he summoned me, he said to me, Ya Hamida, call my children, summon my children, my sons and my daughters. I wish to share with them some pieces of advice. Hamida, she narrates, she says, I went and I called all the sons and the daughters of the Imam alayhi salam. They came into the the room and they sat around their father As-Sadiq alayhi salatu was-salam. The Imam alayhi salam, he sees his sons and his daughters and he says to them, "Oh my sons and my daughters, I have one piece of advice for you. Whenever you go into the streets of Medina, whenever you interact with my Shia, tell them and remind them that my thoughts and my prayers are with them." Look at the profound words of the Imam alayhi salam. The Imam in his final moments is thinking about his Shia. The Imam in his final moments is thinking about his followers. The Imam is not thinking about joining his father, is not thinking about joining his grandfather Rasulullah in the kingdom of heavens, is not thinking about joining his grandmother Fatima az-Zahra. The Imam is not thinking about his sons and his wives and his daughters, that he will leave them behind. The Imam is saying to his sons and his daughters that I will think about my Shia, that I am thinking about my Shia. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, it makes it important, a necessity, that we think about the Imam, that we think about Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Let's take our hearts towards the streets of streets of Medina. Let's take our hearts towards Al-Baqi', the grave of the Imam alayhi salam, which was destroyed and demolished by the remnants of the Bani Umayyah. The grave of the Imam alayhi salam, which has been abandoned until today. He says to his sons and his daughters, he says, explain to my Shia that our intercession and our shafa'ah will never reach them, will never reach the ones who lighten their salah, those who belittle their salah. The Imam alayhi salam, then he begins to go into the stages of unconsciousness. His sons and his daughters, they leave the room one by one. Hamida, the wife of the Imam alayhi salam, she carries on narrating. She says that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam at one point in time stretched his arms and he stretched his legs. Then he called out and he recited Bismillah wa billah وعلى ملة جد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. Then the soul and the ruh of the Imam alayhi salam began leaving his body. They say Imam al-Qadhim alayhi salam. Imam al-Qadhim alayhi salam then prepared the funeral of his father as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Imam al-Qadhim began to perform the ghusl. Imam al-Qadhim began to shroud the body of his father as-Sadiq. Then the Imam alayhi salam buried the body of his father alongside his grandfather al-Baqir and his great-grandfather as-Sajjad. But we say to Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Assalamu alayka, Ya Mawlaya, Ya Aba Abdullah, Ya Jafar ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq. At least your son was there alongside you, who looked after you. But who was there alongside your grandfather, Abu Abdullah, in the plains of Karbala on the day of Ashura? Who would have thought that on the final moments in the life of Abu Abdullah, that it would have been Shimr ibn al-Joshan who would be alongside Imam al-Hussein. When Zainab al-Kubra came out of the khayma, when she came out of the tents and she saw the abandoned body of her brother Abu Abdullah, she cries out, Aywa Janda, Aywa Rasul Allah, Aywa Aliyah, Aywa Husayna. She cries out, oh my grandfather Rasulullah, look what they've done to the body of my brother Abu Abdullah. Look how they Look how they trampled on the body of my brother Abu Abdullah. Look how they abandoned the body of my brother Abu Abdullah alayhi salam. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. If we can end with Surah Al-Fatiha, inshallah, Surah Al-Mubarakah Al-Fatiha.